To the part 2 of our 3-part Local History Research 101 series here at Moffat Library. My name is Matt. I'm the local history librarian here at the Moffat Library of Washingtonville in Orange County, New York. And this video is going to take us from the physical collections that we have here in the building that we explained in part 1. The link to that video is in the description of this one. To what we have available to you online, and how we could actually bring our archives into your home or onto your personal devices, no matter where you are, or when you are researching or what you are researching. So we're going to be covering a lot of virtual things that we have, digitized things in our collection, and also going to give you a sneak preview of some other things that we have that we've just recently added that we plan to digitize and upload as they come up in our queue. So a little bit about our online collections and resources. They are available anytime, anywhere, as I said at the beginning of the video. They are basically, this includes our local history guide, which we covered in part 1, our digital collections of New York Heritage, History Pin, and Flickr. These are digitized or scanned documents, photographs, and other ephemera that have been added to these database portals, which basically allows you to see a high-resolution image of an original document or artifact in our collection. These are all designed to get you close to the history of our area and our library. A lot of the things that we put out online we do based on what is frequently requested. Also, things that we know are historically important, not just to our area, but on a national and sometimes international level as well. We want to really show that the history that was made here in Washingtonville is reflected on some major national events as well as local ones too. The first database we're going to be looking at is New York Heritage, and you could access that by going to nyheritage.org. And what this is it's a portal for libraries, archives, and museums, historical societies throughout New York State to share their historic collections with you. It's a really great database. It's free. You don't have to pay anything to access it. You don't need to create an account to access it. And the search function on there is very fluid. So basically, it's a matter of, if you want, you could search by topic, region, holding institution, or keyword. For example, Franklin Delano Roosevelt or David H. Moffat. If you want to search War of 1812 or Civil War stuff, you get the idea. It will pull up not just things from our collection, but from collections all across New York State, which is really great, especially if you're a researcher and you want to compare things, or you feel like you want to do a history of, let's say, railroads in New York State, or maybe see how a certain event played out in different areas throughout our state. And the items that are on there, they include photographs, letters, books, maps, and oral histories, which is really great. So you could actually, some institutions have, actual interviews with people who lived through historic events that were recorded, and they've uploaded them to this service. So you could actually listen to people, who may not be with us anymore, talking about major events in our nation's history, or even just how life was back in the day in the area in which you're researching. And some places even have online exhibits on there as well. Our landing page on New York Heritage is this URL here. So you just type all that in if you want to go directly to us. If not, you could always go to basically the organizations tab and contributing organizations, and we pop up there in the M's, so it's alphabetical. But if you want to get to our landing page directly, this is the URL that you use. And when you get there, you're going to see some of our collections. So these collections, as I said before, they're based on things that we have in our local history collection that are historically important. They're rare. They're things that people ask for frequently, and we are always updating them and adding on to them and maybe creating new collections as we see a need for them. So these are some of the ones that we have currently on there. We have about 7 major collections on New York Heritage, and again, we're going to be adding on to those as they come along. So we have, and we're going to go through each of these one by one. So the first collection that we're going to look at is our historic postcard collection. These postcards document life in our village and the town of Blooming Grove, as well as the surrounding area, sometime between 1900 and roughly 1920, 1930, when these postcards were produced. You'll see that there's some major landmarks in this collection, such as the Erie Railroad Station, which is no longer standing. It burned in a fire in the 1990s, but you could see what it would have looked like around 1900 to 1915. We also have the Brooks Bridge. Again, it's no longer standing. It was torn down in the 1920s. However, if you go on Route 94, New York State Route 94 heading west towards Chester, or you're coming from Chester east into the village of Washingtonville, you'll see a blue marker that marks it. And so the postcard there kind of shows you what Brooks Bridge would have looked like, again, right before it was torn down. This is another postcard that I just kind of picked out to highlight. Again, this is Main Street heading east. So if you're not you are familiar with the area and you visit our library, imagine you're walking out of the library and you make a left-hand turn. This is kind of what you're seeing. So on the left-hand side, we have the store of Samuel Moffat III that was established here in 1812. You have the watering trough and the elm tree, which were also fixtures in our community. Again, both of them no longer standing, but kind of has a lot of resonance with older people who still live here. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's the Grange store. That is that's a dance studio today, but again, that building is still standing. And just next to it is a grocery store, or a produce store that would have been active in the area back in that time. You'll also notice that the streets are not paved. This is color. It's actually, which is really nice. So again, it's artificially colored, but you get a good idea of kind of what life was like in the village. And again, if you click on this this postcard, you can actually blow it up to the full screen, your full screen, and you could actually really get highly detailed, a zoom in of everything going on, even down to what's in the wagons being pulled by the horses on the left-hand side. We also have a historic photograph collection. Now, these photographs were actually taken from glass plate negatives. The dawn of photography, around 1850 to 1900, the first 50 years or so, give or take, we were using glass plates that were coated in a special chemical compound that allowed images in reverse to be taken of people, places, and events. And you'll notice that some of these images, there are people moving, and they're a little bit blurry. Again, that's down to the technology that was being used at the time. But these are some of the earliest photographs of our village and our region. They date to between 1900 and 1907. And they highlight a lot of buildings that are no longer standing and some that still are, but they may not look the same, which is really cool. And what we basically did with these photographs was we took the glass plate negatives and we worked with a specialist that handled these very delicate, breakable negative images, and was able to reverse image scan them. And from those scans, we were able to get positive images. So what you're seeing is actually not the glass plates themselves, but the images that were produced from them digitally using high-resolution scanners and professional training and know-how. So these are some really great images to go through. For example, this is the Edward J. McLaughlin store. This would have sat on North Street the intersections of North Street and Main Street in Washingtonville. You might know this today as where Stewart's is. If you're not from the area, it's a gas station and convenience store. And this was the building that supposedly John Jakes, the future founder of Brotherhood Wine Company, kind of started to experiment with growing grapes in the 1830s. Because this was at the time, this was his tannery, and the building, unfortunately, it was torn down in the 1960s. But this is a really great image because it's showing you again what it would have looked like sometime around 1900 to 1907, 1908. You can see the telegraph pole out front because that was also a telegraph station. Again, all the news of the world to and from came in through this building. As well as, people would pick up their dry goods and groceries here too. So it was a real hub of activity. And you could even see a gentleman standing out there near the bicycles. That could have been Edward McLaughlin himself. Another collection we have that's fairly new, but it's probably our largest and most complete that's online, is the Sears Collection. This contains 35 deeds and indentures covering the years 1771 to 1818. So these are documents that predate the Declaration of Independence and the American War of Independence, or the American Revolutionary War. So see, these are some of our oldest documents in our collection, but ironically, they're related to Montgomery, which is a town in Orange County, New York. It's a little bit north of us here. And they were found in a trunk dating to around 1801. Now, you might be wondering why a library that's focused on Washingtonville and Blooming Grove has these documents. Well, basically, they all date back to a member of the Sears family, and that was Benjamin Sears. Now, Benjamin Sears was a fairly well-known sheriff and magistrate in the area. He was the son of William Sewell Sears. Benjamin was born in 1745, so about 20 years before the American Revolutionary War, and he was appointed sheriff of Ulster County, which later became Orange County, during that time. And he was appointed that by Governor George Clinton on February 18th, 1793, and then he also became vendue master, and he was authorized by John Jay. And what a vendue master is essentially is you're a legally appointed auctioneer. So his name appears on a lot of these documents because they're documents related to the transfer of land. They're related to, basically handing off, paying off debts and things like that. So him in his official capacity as a sheriff and registered auctioneer, he co-signed a lot of these, or these are copies that he kept for legal purposes. And so he was a pretty important person, but he happened to own land in Blooming Grove, and basically, where the Sears and Howell farm would have been on New York State Route 94 heading towards Chester, that was roughly where he was living towards the end of his life. So these are somebody else's papers, but he is a very important person in our community because he was, very well off. He would have covered our area as well as Montgomery, and these documents relate to that specific area, but we are custodians of them because he was important to our area too. But we made sure that we made all of these available online for you. For example, this is one of the earliest maps that at least I've been able to come across of the village of Montgomery. Dates to around 1800. And if you see on the right-hand side, there's the Wallkill River. It's bending around, and essentially the bridge that would have crossed it would have eventually gone across there. And you'll see, too, there are lot numbers. So, again, people buying lots and parcels of land, which are actually referenced in a few of these deeds, they're actually numbered out. So you could see who was buying what and where they were roughly living around the time that this map was produced. So really important information, especially if you're trying to kind of locate your ancestors or relatives and seeing kind of roughly where they lived. You will see too, this is almost like a first draft of the map. You'll see that there's above the towards the top, there's a script note that says this is wrong. So again, not quite sure what that's in reference to, but if you're interested, we do have it available online, and you could zoom in basically all the way to see the individual numbers on this map. It's really, really great. We also have indentures. This is an indenture between James Barclay and John Barclay for a parcel of land known as the 8,000 Acres Tract, and that was made on December 11th, 1771. And this is one of the earliest deeds in our collection. And one of the nice things with this collection, too, is most of these documents have been transcribed, meaning that despite the rips and some of the tears and the way that the script might appear, it's actually we've actually been able to read it and transcribe most of these documents, so you could actually read them using a modern word processor if you wanted to, or you could read them straight off the website using modern text, which is really handy. Another collection that we have is the 148th New York State Militia Collection. This includes inspection returns of local militia regiment from an 1819 muster, and then it doesn't really include names of individual people that were in this militia, but it does include the names of major officers and NCOs like sergeants and corporals that would have been involved in the raising and training of these individual companies. It also shows what equipment these guys would have worn. If you were anywhere between the ages of 18 and 60 during this time period, you were required by law to basically be a member of this militia. And militia was involved in obviously protecting the area, but it was also a social club. And these musters, that's usually what they were known for, is that this is just a time, they would meet maybe 2 or 3 times a year, socialize, they would do a little bit of training, they might fire their muskets and then go home. That was really what they did. During the War of 1812, there was a lot of activity with our local militia. They went down to Staten Island, but this is a little bit after that. What's interesting is that they are connected to a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Dunning, and he was born in the town of Wallkill in Orange County, New York, on May 6, 1781, and he moved to Minnesink in 1809. He was involved in the War of 1812. He served as a captain in the militia regiment, and he was later made general in the New York State Militia. He was also elected to the New York State Assembly in 1824, and so he was kind of like a very well-known politician, socialite, and this was his militia regiment, and it would have consisted of companies from our area as well. So that's really cool. Yeah, so this is just another collection that we have. It's rather small, but if you're into military history, especially that time period that's after the Revolutionary War, after the War of 1812, but right before the Civil War, you kind of want to see what people, who was in charge of what here, looking at the names of these officers, you get a good idea of that, and you get a good idea of the structure of this paramilitary group that was active in our area during that time. For example, this is an inspection return of Captain Joseph Stewart's company, 148th New York, and this was taken on October 8th, 1819. And you could see, basically how many soldiers were active in this specific company. You could see that they don't just have rifles and muskets, they also have a fifer and a drummer, and basically they would have been used as your radio relayers during this time period of war when you need to kind of communicate something across a battlefield. So we see musicians in this company, and it's also in the hand of the person who took it. So you could imagine during one of these militia musters, these guys lined up, as best they can be, as professional as they can be, and basically the lieutenant or the adjutant walking by and just saying, state your name, okay, tick, 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 and then basically just saying, okay, well, so we have 20 muskets, we have 5 rifles, we have 18 bayonets, and he's writing all this down, and for us to look at over 200 years later, it's a really cool piece of history. We also have from this collection a regimental return for a concert that was held. We're not really sure what the concert was supposed to commemorate or if it was just something that they did. But the interesting thing with this list is it actually lists individual soldiers that would have been trained to play bassoon. We have some clarinets, we have a bass drum, we have one person who refuses to do duty as a drummer, or which is listed here, and also like you have a couple people who are unfit for duty, and basically what that means is that they might be sick, they might be unwell, they might be injured, and they might not be able to kind of play their instruments. But we have this list on New York Heritage as well. History Pin is another really great resource we have. It's an interactive map that connects historic images through Google Street View. So if you ever wanted to see kind of what a building used to look like, and basically see how it changed over time, this is a really great free service that you could explore on. And we have a couple of small collections on here. A lot of the things that are on History Pin we already have on New York Heritage, but it's basically just a way for us to kind of show you, this is where this church was, and this is what the church looked like from your phone or, from your home computer. This is our History Pin landing page. Again, you could just go to historypin.org. You could type in Washingtonville, New York. We should pop up in there. But if you wanted to access History Pin directly, this is the URL to go to. And again, like I said, this is kind of what the service is used for. So we see here, this is Route 94 heading towards Chester. So we're heading west. And you'll see that there's one of our postcards from around 1916, 1917 across the way, and it's overlapped with this street view image. And you could see kind of where the elm tree would have been, where the Moffat store would have been. That's no longer there. And on the left-hand side, you could see, what's today the Hook and Ladder Saloon, which is that middle building. You could see the bank, which is, it's the First National Bank of Washingtonville building, which is still standing on the far end there. And you also have a banner, which we later found out was a banner for promoting the women's suffrage movement, which is a really cool thing that we were able to discover by scanning these images high resolution and actually zooming in on them. And we could actually read some of the text, which is really great. We also have a couple of tours on there. We have a notable graves tour, which we're trying to kind of add on to as we go along. And this is really strictly based on images that we have in our collection of people that are buried in Washingtonville Cemetery. We also have a World War I tour, which basically kind of follows the Hudson family a little bit. And we also have a Moffat tour as well. Again, it's really strictly virtual. It's not like we're going to be giving you a guided tour, but again, it's just a way to kind of show collections of images that are related to each other to tell a story, and really the story of our area. Finally, we come to Flickr. Flickr is a really great service, as many of you are probably already aware of this. And you could access our Flickr page by going to flickr.com/people/Moffat Library. And unlike the other databases that I showed you earlier, this is strictly for our history. And when I say our, I'm talking about the history of our library. These are images that document programs, activities, things that happened here roughly between 1980 to the present. And right now it consists of about 2,700 images. Again, they're all scanned high resolution, and many of them were collected over the years. They were taken by Moffat Library staff members, and they were lovingly preserved by us to share with you. Because I'm sure a lot of you who were patrons of ours during these times, or even may still be patrons of ours, may see either your children or yourselves or relatives of yours participating in some of the programs. And again, this is a really great way to kind of show how the library changed over time. This is our this is now our adult wing, but back when this photo was taken in 2001, the library itself was really operated by, the library building was operated by the recreation department, the Town of Blooming Grove Recreation Department. So you see this room is set up more for kind of like dancing, parties, balls, physical activities. But this is from our summer reading program from 2001. And, it looks a lot different now after the renovation, But again, if you remember the library during this time period, this is a really great kind of memory jogger for you, and it might kind of also help people it might help you kind of see how the library changed over time, which is really great. This is another program that's being held at our library. This is in 2000. This is Cooking with Norma Chang. And this room now that is being shown is our teen room. And so you can see again how the interior of the library changed over time. But we were still doing like a lot of really great programs, cooking programs and things like that back in the day. We still are doing a lot of really great programs now, but you can kind of see the different things that we used to do, and kind of reminisce on those, which is always really great. So now I kind of went through what we currently have. It's time to show you what we are planning to put up. So the first things first is we're getting new postcards. So we've spent the last year collecting new postcards of our area. Here are some Main Street views from roughly 1950, 1956, and 1986. So we're covering years that we don't normally have on our postcard collection page. Again, those are postcards from roughly 1900 to 1920. So we really want to upload some newer images, so you could see kind of how the village changed, or in some cases stayed the same. So we're adding these to our collection as well, and also in color, which is really great. So this is again postcard similar scene to the other two. It's Main Street in Washingtonville. This is from the late 1960s. Really, really cool. We also have rural scenes. So here we have two scenes from, we have a scene from Burnside on the left and Campbell Hall on the right, because we want to show that things in our collection, they're related to other geographic areas that the library also serves. And these are two areas that the library has served for many years, especially when we were in our temporary location in Campbell Hall. So we wanted to kind of highlight the rural life of our village and our town at the turn of the century. We also have resorts and recreation postcards. This is one of the Mountain Lodge Inn from around 1940. The great thing with this one is that somebody actually sent it to somebody in Cherry Valley, New York, so in the Mohawk Valley. So this person was writing to a friend of theirs, basically saying, "We're having a wonderful time. Hope to see you soon." Both of these images will be going up online, so you could actually read the message on the back too. So again, as close as we can get to giving you the actual postcard is what we're kind of going for. And we're going to be adding more stuff on Mountain Lodge Park very soon. Another resort that we have is Hil-Mar Lodge. This is located in Salisbury Mills, so heading towards Cornwall area. And so again, we have an exterior shot, but we also have an interior shot too of the dining area, which is really great. Again, you have that wonderful vintage 1960s, 1970s, orange color. I'm sure many of you could remember it more specifically than I, but you could really kind of feel that Mad Men era vibe from these interior shots, which is really cool because it's like you're actually walking into the dining room. We also have Feller's Resort. Mentioned Campbell Hall and Burnside before, so Feller's Resort was in Campbell Hall, about 5 miles north of the village of Washingtonville. And unfortunately, Feller's no longer exists, and the only structure actually that still stands is the annex, and that is now an apartment complex. But we're fortunate that we have these postcards here to show you what the resort would have looked like in its heyday, roughly between the 1940s and 1950s era, where a lot of people from New York City were coming up here to vacation, and this was kind of a happening spot for that. We also have objects and artifacts that we're going to be adding to our collections. For example, the Moffat store ledger. This is a really great document that kind of shows the economic history of our area. I mentioned the Moffat store earlier. It was constructed around 1812. It was kind of the first, general store and it was established right at the intersection of the Blooming Grove Turnpike and Goshen Avenue. So anybody who was coming north or south, east or west through our area, they would probably stop here and buy goods or sell things. And that's what this ledger records. It records what things were being sold to who, the prices of those things, and from the store's early days. So from 1806, which predates the better known structure, to around 1812, to when this structure was fully open. We also have another ledger called the Hudson Family Ledger. This dates to the 19th century. And again, we're not going to be putting up the entire ledger online, but we're going to put up a couple of key, I guess, pages. And the cool thing with this ledger is it looks very similar to the Moffat ledger from the previous slide, but at some point there were all these scribble marks in it, and basically just kind of like looked like somebody was trying to test a pen or a pencil out on a piece of scratch paper. But the further we went into the ledger, the more we found out. This drawing of a donkey, but the person wrote donkey, so D-U-N-K-Y, and says Papa's donkey, tells us that a child drew this. And they're not just drawing it just to, just to doodle. They're actually learning how to spell, and they're also spelling phonetically. So when you're reading Papa's donkey, you are actually speaking in the dialect in a way, or you're pronouncing that word the way this child would have pronounced it over 100 years ago, which is really, really cool. And we want to be able to put this up online too. We also learned a lot about the Hudson family and what they had. These are some pigs, believe it or not, that they would have had on the farm, and we know this from the fact that this was on a page that preceded another page that said pigs. So we know that the Hudsons who lived on Hudson Road in the town of Blooming Grove, just outside the village of Washingtonville, they had a pretty active dairy farm. They were a very well-established family. They came to the area originally in the 1750s, and their farmhouse is still standing. But during this time period, they would have had mainly dairy cows, but they would have probably had some pigs and chickens as well. We also see this is a drawing probably of an adult. We're not sure if this is Phoebe Townsend Wright Hudson, known as Aunt Phoebe, or Grace Alma Wright, who was the mother who lived in the household. But you could see that this is somebody who's wearing a late Victorian, or what we would consider kind of like a Gilded Age or Progressive Era gown or dress, and it's floral print. So this is an adult wearing something that adults would have worn during that time period, but seen through the eyes of a child, which is really cool. And to tie it kind of all together, you can't really see this terribly well, but if you look kind of sideways, you'll see that there's a handprint that's been traced there. And so we know kind of roughly how old these kids were by looking at the handprint, and everybody's hand's a little bit different, but one of the more interesting things that we did here at the library was we had a group of Cub Scouts come and we showed this, and we asked them, how old do you think these kids were? And we said to them, very carefully, hold your hands up and like make this, and hold it up just a little bit to this outline and see how old these kids were. And the kids were roughly right. They were around the ages of 8, 9, 10 years old. So they were coming of age, but they were still kind of growing. And these are the Hudsons themselves, just to kind of show you, put some faces to the scribbles. We have William J. Hudson. His name is in very good script there. He was the father, and you'll see him in the picture on the left-hand side, sitting down. And then we have Ethel. Ethel is the young lady in the last row, standing in the middle. And again, she was kind of known as a social butterfly. She loved to dance. She wrote lots of love letters, we know, to soldiers serving overseas during World War I. And unfortunately, she met a tragic end. She was not terribly healthy, and she died at an early age. But she was her. But you see her handwriting is here. And then Bess is probably Phoebe, and she is the sister of Grace Alma Wright, the woman who is sitting in the middle next to William J. Hudson, who is her husband. And I'm sorry, I'm sorry, back that up. So Phoebe's actually the one who's sitting in the middle between William J. and Grace Alma Wright. Grace Alma Wright is on the far right, and she was married to William J. Hudson. And then in the middle there, the young boy, that's Reeves Hudson. And Reeves was the youngest child of the Hudson family. And they took this picture for their other son, David, who was about to go overseas to serve in World War I. We're also looking at digitizing the Orange County Post. We're in the process of uploading, well, not uploading, but we're currently going through bound volumes of the Orange County Post and basically creating high-resolution images off of these that are being that we could access here at the library. We also are creating microfilm copies of it as well. So eventually we will be able to view these in the library. So this is, again, another big project that we're undertaking to make sure that you have information that we're able to provide you with information that can help you, locate obituaries of loved ones, news stories that you're researching, specific events from the early days of this specific newspaper, which covered our area. It's the only one that covered really Washingtonville specifically, up until it folded a year or two ago. With that, I welcome you to ask us any questions that you happen to have. Feel free to email us at moffat@rcls.org. You can also contact us via phone, 845-496-5483, extension 326. Again, as I said in the previous video, if you have a specific question about something that we may have in the collection or a research question, I highly recommend the email, only because you can provide us with links to things that you're using, or if you want to give us some information on your loved ones that you're researching or your genealogy. It's really great to have all of that, and because we're also learning too, as people come to us and say, hey, do you have anything related to this family or that family? We may or may not have those. We may or may not have those family trees or every a complete report, but we might have documents that you've never seen before, and at the same time, you may have things that we have never seen before either. And together, it's a really great way that we could kind of collaborate and learn more about our community and share that with other patrons in the future. So with that, thank you very much for attending part 2 of our Local History Research 101 class on or series on YouTube, and we look forward to seeing you next time.